When I watched the trailer for the Resident Evil 3 remake, I caught a small detail that set my speculative gears turning. I noticed that the helicopter getting shot down looked really similar to the helicopter that crashed into the police department in the Resident Evil 2 remake. So I went back into Resident Evil 2 to compare. And sure enough, not only do both helicopters have the same design, but they have the same serial number. Knowing what I know about the original games, Resident Evil 2 begins roughly around the time Jill Valentine is infected with the T-virus. She's infected at the clock tower fight with Nemesis, just after Nemesis shoots down a rescue helicopter. In the original Resident Evil 2, we see in a cutscene that the helicopter that blocks the hallway to the chief's office was accidentally shot down by a cop as he was being eaten by zombies. In the remake, the crash is completely unexplained. Given that the timelines of the two games sync up, and the same helicopter that crashed into the police station is shot down in the Resident Evil 3 trailer, I was sure that what I saw was a reimagined physical connection between the two games. And that would have been very cool, if it was true. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed in the lost potential there. I have in my brain what I'm calling a tale of two raccoon cities. One is the version that I built in my head. It's the raccoon city of my nostalgia, my enjoyment and memories of the original games. The other is the version we got in the remakes. I'm going to rip off the band-aid early on and clarify that I really love the remake titles. Yes, both of them. And even so, I still prefer the original games. I feel the need to say this early because I have a lot of criticism to levy against the remakes. In no way does lack of perfection prevent me from really loving a game, and I am not hubristic enough to believe that what I consider perfection should, would, or could apply to everyone else. As a side note, Resident Evil 1 remake, that's perfection to me. So this video is about introspection. It's about tearing into something and exposing all its flaws and coming out the other side with my appreciation still intact. So let's cut into it. In my mind, the worst thing they did in the Resident Evil 2 remake was screw up the A and B scenarios. For those familiar with the remake, but unfamiliar with the original, I'll spell out some of the differences. In 1998's Resident Evil 2, the events of the story actually change depending on who you play first. Sherry may or may not get infected. Ada will get shot by a net or slammed by the tyrant. And all the side characters will meet different fates. There are some small puzzle crossovers, but for the most part, the pathways through the game are significantly different. Character A will take the lift in their scenario, but then character B will have to call the lift back up and then take an alternate path down to the lab. And scenario A and B characters fight a completely different set of bosses. Character A will never even see the tyrant that character B has to fight. Faces of Birkin will alternate between the two characters in a way that lines up with the continuity of events. It's surprisingly well done. In 2019's Resident Evil 2, the scenario changes are half-baked at best. Enemy placement, item locations, and puzzle solutions are remixed. But the boss fights are exactly the same between A and B scenarios, even when it makes little sense for it to happen. Then each character gets their own final boss, regardless of A or B scenario. Claire will always face off against G Stage 4, and Leon will always fight the Super Tyrant. And the storylines don't change depending on which character goes first. Plus, the continuity is all messed up. Take the helicopter I mentioned earlier. In the first run, Marvin shows, let's say Claire, that he spotted Leon in front of the side entrance. The security camera shows Leon standing in front of the gate, looking up at the station. As Claire runs down the hall toward the exterior staircase, the chopper crashes into the building. When you play Leon's second run, however, the chopper crashes as you ascend the stairs. before you even approach the gate to be seen on the security camera. Another example. After the fight with G Stage 3, Claire meets up with Annette after she administers the cure to Sherry. During Annette's death scene, we hear the facility alert that the G virus has been removed.
Attention, unauthorized removal of a level 4 virus detected. Facility locked.
That's Leon. And on Leon's side of things, he's about to begin his fight with G Stage 3. It mutates again, in the same room, with Annette. The Tyrant is killed in Claire's storyline, but continues to pursue Leon. They try to include moments where the two characters sync up, but it's just impossible to square away the timeline. And yet, you have to play the first and second run in order to see the full ending, as if the game is trying to tell one connected story. The original Resident Evil 3 didn't have multiple campaigns, but it did have these live-action choice elements that change your pathway through the game. Most of the changes resulted in slight variations, rather than completely diverging paths. There were a few different endings based on whether or not Nikolai escapes, but the differences were mild, and what you end up actually playing is mostly the same. But it was because of the extent to which Resident Evil 2's remake screwed up the multiple campaigns, I didn't feel the lack of branching paths in Resident Evil 3 was much of a loss. I would have rather Resident Evil 2 be constructed like 3, with a single campaign switching off characters if that would have resulted in a more coherent story. The branching paths would have given Resident Evil 3 more replayability for many people though, which would have benefited the game's reception since the short runtime was a common complaint. The breezy campaign doesn't bother me all that much. The Resident Evil games are classically designed to be replayed over and over, and Resident Evil 3's shorter length makes it an enticing candidate. When I replay Resident Evil 2, I don't usually play a full first and second run. I play my favorite of the four, Claire A, and I'm satisfied with just that. Games are consumed in many contexts that affect our ability to appreciate and criticize. Resident Evil 3 had the unfortunate circumstance of coming after 2 set up the expectations that the game would play roughly the same. It's an understandable expectation. The games use the same engine, have the same art direction, and noticeably use many of the same assets. Most zombies in Resident Evil 2 exist as a single persistent entity in the game. A zombie left alive will be waiting for you in the same spot should you return to the location. Dead zombie bodies lingered where they fell, threatening the potential to get up again. In 3, zombie bodies disappear. Zombies left alive will disappear later. And cleared areas may refill once you've completed your tasks and triggered the next stage of events. In both games, certain zombies rise after scripted moments. A Resident Evil 2 player, familiar with enough of the game to know which ones will attack, can preempt the ambush and dispatch the enemy early on. However, the game punishes over-checking corpses as well. This zombie and nest outside of the freezer will never get up if you leave it alone, but it will activate if you damage it. Resident Evil 3 doesn't operate like that. This corpse, laying in the hallway to the railway office, is indestructible. No amount of damage will kill it before its moment to stand up after the train routing puzzle. This gives Resident Evil 3 a feeling of artificiality that 2 didn't have, and unfortunately, that feeling bled over to the game's star villain, Nemesis. Now, I think the issue with Nemesis being too scripted in the remake is a bit overblown, because he was very scripted in the original game as well. He always showed up in the same spots after completing specific tasks or entering areas. Then he'd chase you around as you looked for where you had to go next. The Tyrant in Resident Evil 2 is a better Nemesis. Nemesis with a lowercase n. The way he's implemented makes him more of a stalker. He was very powerful, but just slow enough that you could lose him in the police station. From there, you must proceed with your tasks cautiously, while his footsteps thump all around you, making you ever aware of his presence. There is no losing Nemesis. He's too agile and aggressive, and wherever you go, he can drop in next to you. So in this role, he's less of a stalker and more strictly a pursuer. You're not trying to play the game around him. When he shows up, that means you're done with a segment, and now you're in a chase sequence transition to the next area. In the context of the original game, there's a noticeable chunk of content that wasn't translated to the remake. The clock tower was a small area, but it was fleshed out with puzzles. It was an additional stage for Nemesis to arrive, and it was the site of important moments like the fake-out ending with the rescue chopper. In the remake, it's reduced to a backdrop for a boss fight. The train boss fight with Nemesis was changed into a cutscene. The park was cut entirely, and with it the Gravedigger boss. Minor locations like the newspaper office and restaurant, Brad's iconic death at the hands of Nemesis in front of the police department. But I mean, I get it. It's disappointing, but I get it. In the Resident Evil 2 remake, I found it disappointing that the train lift was changed into the arena for G Stage 4. That change meant we were robbed of an iconic location that's appeared across multiple Resident Evil games. And one of the best things about the multiple scenarios in the original Resident Evil 2 didn't make the cut: interaction between the two paths. When playing through Scenario A, you had the option to take a machine gun and/or an item pouch, or leave something for the second character in Scenario B. Then there's the security shutters. You find a power cord that can lower the window shutters to prevent zombies from getting into one of the hallways. In Scenario B, the shutters you selected are actually down, at least until the cable shorts out. So you can imagine my disappointment when playing the remake and having the option to board up windows. I was confident that the mechanic would strategically benefit the second character on their run, but that wasn't the case, because no actions carried over. Look, I'm not part of the development team, so I don't know where their limitations were. Budget costs, production schedule, creative decisions, technical issues. The lack of the Gravedigger, I imagine, would be in part due to huge technical issues. With the games having a more realistic appearance and atmosphere, how would someone create a dynamic boss encounter with so much environmental destruction? And if they ever remake Code Veronica, that may need to be addressed. On the other hand, they moved forward with other choices that had less than elegant solutions. The hospital defense scene played out like a minigame challenge mode. The zombie bodies exploded in an almost cartoon fashion that almost certainly was the save on memory, but didn't happen in any other moment in the game. And the low frame stationary animation backdrops for the windows and main door were just mind-blowingly out of place. Even that helicopter that I keep harping on, even that cut a corner. When you look at the serial number on the tail that launched my pre-release theory, you might pick up that the opposite side has a reverse serial number. It's just mirrored. The number is all symmetrical characters, so it doesn't look backward, but each side has a different serial number. For some people, this will all look like evidence of shoddy workmanship, proof of the cynical AAA cash grab. Personally, I'm trying not to judge, because I don't know the reasons for things being different from what I wanted or expected. A lot of dedicated artists, animators, programmers, actors, and a ton of other talented people worked really hard to create something I believe they wanted me to enjoy. Plus, it's easy for me to imagine the game I wanted instead, because I have the originals as a reference. If I truly had it my way, I'd have it be just like the Resident Evil 1 remake, with the fixed camera angles and pre-rendered backgrounds. Instead, I'm trying to see what is there instead of only what isn't. I find the remakes incredibly fun to play. They look great. I enjoy the redesigns of the characters and enemies, and the reimagined scenarios. Resident Evil 2 rolled back the gameplay of the series pretty damn close to what I think is a good compromise between old and new styles of gameplay. It had the benefit of taking a lot of people by surprise and drummed up a decent amount of interest in the niche genre of survival horror. Resident Evil 3 definitely has the tone and pace of a 90s action film instead of an atmospheric horror game. I think that makes it a bit harder to accept, just because of the stigma that an action focus has in this series in particular. But if I'm being fair, minus the lack of puzzles, it's a lot like the original Resident Evil 3. It is so hard to live up to the expectations that people have based on pre-existing relationships with a franchise. As a longtime fan, I think I may be impossible to please and impossible to disappoint. I'm self-aware enough to know that my dedication is some kind of brain rot based on brand loyalty to a corporate product seeded into me when I was a young teenager. I was in the right place and the right time to imprint on these games like they were my wire effigy of a mother with an infinite capacity to receive my affection while being incapable of reciprocating.
Now, we'll try the same test with a cloth mother in the room.
I think the most valuable thing these Resident Evil remakes have given me is perspective. Enthusiasm and disappointment, in equal measure, occupy the same space in my heart where these games exist. And I know there are a ton of people out there that groan with every Resident Evil title that's announced. And amid all those cries that Capcom's milking the franchise, I'm excited. I'm always excited. A video game doesn't need to be beyond criticism for me to love it. And I don't need consensus to help me feel validated over my opinion. So, to the people that love these games, and to the ones that really hate them, I get it. Me too.